Hi, I'm Emilio DeGrazia, and beside me at the piano is Dante, my son. Thank you to the good people listening to KMSU Radio. Dante and I appreciate your willing to listen to us today. I also want to thank the Southeast Minnesota Arts Council for supporting this program and many other arts activities throughout the southern Minnesota region, with funds made possible by the Minnesota State Arts Board through a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. What my son Dante and I are doing today is unusual. Music and poetry have a long history together, but when people started reading books, music and poetry suffered a divorce. We want to remarry them. All the music you hear today was composed and is being played by my son Dante, who writes poetry too. Our program. Dante's a musician with varied tastes. I'm delighted that he's willing to marry his music to my words. I've written a collection of poetry called What Trees Know. The poems in it are all about trees, what we know about them and don't, how trees figure into ancient legends and myths, and what trees mean to me personally. In it, I also tell a story called Burying the Tree. It's about an immigrant to these United States, the fig tree in my Winona backyard. It is, I insist, Minnesota's only fig tree to survive our winter storms. You'll hear 3 languages: words, music, and silence. Silence is the language of trees. We want our words and music to speak for them. Their messages are silent and secretive in ways we are now just beginning to understand. Know nothing. The secret is all mine. Ripples on shorelines of seas say nothing clear to me, so I can't make sense of those fish schools lurking big-eyed below, weaving their way like dreams as they swim in my mind. And I can't stare down the sun that glares its fires at me so brilliantly to see how it sees me, or what light it can shed on war, suffering, or love, or why the laziest leaves of autumn trees keep hanging on, or why trees never hold jobs or run away and never complain that their heartwood is unseen from inside the windshields of cars, or why trees, unlike lords and priests, invent no theories and theologies, flowering, swaying, still and moved, erring and beautiful. Aspen verse. E.M. Forster said, "Only connect." If everything, this life, were made of dots, the prophet would understand why braided aspen roots shudder the surface of a pond, while the traffic in L.A. is touched by the whiskers of a catfish brushing weeds in deep-water murk, and why no thoughts shimmer up and down finger spines as hands make music in black and white on piano keys. And why melodies self-organized into wordless symphonies scatter fishlet schools away from the shadow of sharks. In the pauses between breaths, aspen roots weave embroideries envied by artists in Paris and New York, and not for sale in the marketplace. You may never know, the aspens whisper, what you fail to learn from us today. Why would anyone bury a tree? When we picture family trees, we often focus on the branches that extend from a paternal main trunk. How many small branches do we claim to be part of our family tree? Do we include uncles and aunts, their children, and their children's children too? Family trees could branch out and out and out. At some point, we prune, and we cut the family tree off at ground level too, where the family tree's root system is invisible and buried, as if it doesn't exist. In this sense, family trees are rootless. If I start going down and out along the root ganglia into dark history beyond great-great-grandpersons toward those strangers preceding them, my Italian ancestors are Romans, Goths, Huns, certainly Greeks, Arabs, and African migrants before them, some from near Arctic regions as well, others from the tropics, all their languages converging into an incestuous stew of bloods, drawn by wanderers, warmongers, and immigrants. I, child of southern Italians whom northerners jeeringly called terroni, earthlings, see my origin as a stew of Adam, whose name means red clay, and Eve, life force, brought into being by a chance lightning bolt that perfectly shocked some haplessly swimming string of DNA. My parents came from a people who made a living from the land. What they understood best was the struggle and habits of small growing things. For them, the weather was friend or foe. The earth's good humors were dragged out of it with a hoe. It was a terrible shame to waste, for everything had some use. The ground had a strange power to purify. It turned manure into tomatoes and beans. Life was not just a life, but la vita, definite article, the life, the only one. There's something permanent about the picture of my father, but we'll start that one over. There's something permanent about the picture of my father by the old fig tree in our suburban Detroit backyard. My memory of him at work in the yard, from saving old nails and boards to staking tomato plants with strips of rags, returns me to that tree. It's an old black and white photo I carry in my mind, one strangely suffused with the early evening colors of summer fields and blossoming things. A fig tree in a suburban Detroit backyard, so displaced. Like the poet Frost's peach tree trying to survive a winter storm in Vermont. We think of the tree, said Robert Frost, if it never again has leaves, we'll know, we say, that this was the night it died. No one knows for sure how the first fig tree arrived. Peasants from southern Italy smuggled a few sprigs in those leathery suitcases the immigrants lugged off the boats, with pillowcases and underwear, birth certificates, and old deeds, brown photos of the family, of the goat left behind, essentials and memories. Among them, carefully bedded inside a sheet or the arm of an old wool coat, was a green-stemmed branch of the old fig tree still standing next to a road leading to and away from a village. The sprig endured the Ellis Island lines, gave customs the slip, ended up on a train heading to New Jersey or Boston or Pittsburgh or Detroit, surviving on its own green sap until one day rough hands dug a small hole and gave it a place in American soil. There it became the stem for other branches of a community bonded more by language than by blood or place. My father got his fig tree started when he took Tony Posa a bottle of wine and returned with a sprig of Tony's tree. He kept it in a canning jar for more than a month until the tendril roots finally appeared. On a warm, rainy night in late May, I see him digging in the yard, the jar at his side. He mixes sand with the rich loam he's prepared, then finally puts the sprig in the ground, pats the soil all around, steps back to behold his work. Day after day, he waters it. It looks like a bare brown stick in the mud, and so did my father there, on his knees, as he tried to tease some growth from it. buds appear, and then overnight the first small leaves. And what beautiful leaves, especially in miniature. Their bright dark green, soft and thick, deepening one of nature's lovely designs, furled in on itself like an embryo. The poet Frost, perhaps because he felt the cold not only in his name, but in his bones, understood the fig tree problem well. What comes over a man? Is it soul or mind that to no limits and bounds he can stay confined? You would say his ambition was to extend the reach clear to the Arctic of every living thing. Why is his nature so hard to teach that though there is no fixed line between wrong and right, there are roughly zones whose laws must be obeyed? The fig tree in Detroit was, like the Italian immigrants, displaced. When American trains took these immigrants further west and north, mainly to factory work in cities frozen a good part of the year, they found themselves increasingly out of touch with warm skies and the rough, dry soil that had to be coaxed into providing them the stuff of life. America, yes, but America, no. Yes, here was work, and here were perks from work. Indoor plumbing, a washing machine, and maybe someday a car. Cars, indeed. My father's New World work took him into the coke ovens and the open hearth of the Ford Rouge, the biggest auto plant in the world. Plant and hearth, indeed. Massive sheds, smokestacks, and pulleys, a vast crucible that takes Earth's elements in and alchemically turns them into miles of cars and mountains of waste. Black-faced men from the smoke and grime, including my father, who spent 33 years, a Christ age, doing his part to translate the ore from the Minnesota iron ranges into paychecks that paid the bills. Prosperity followed, unnaturally enough. Here's some of what tree scientist Peter Wohlenben tells us about trees in his book, The Hidden Life of Trees. What scientists have been discovering is a vast underground network, an arboreal internet, call it the Wood Wide Web, powered by roots and leaves that function like solar panels. Trees actually communicate through their roots, and some offer each other mutual support. A tree may act as a mother to its neighbors, giving them more carbon than it received in return. Later, the debt is repaid and the roles are reversed. It's become clear that trees benefit by mutual exchange of food, that they exchange vital information, warn their neighbors, and young trees, of threats, and make life-saving sacrifices for them. In their own way, trees are social. They have what could be called feelings and memories. They know how to communicate with one another, and the strong are able to assist the weak. Who would have guessed that acacia trees have their own Me Too moves? Listen to what an acacia tree can do for a sister tree about to be abused by a gazelle. Her parts, the acacias, are well used. Her seeds for sauces, her tannins for dyes, her branches for fences, roofs, and walls, her gum sap for ointments and chewing gum, her oils for perfumes, her blossoms for liqueurs, her essences for mints, and Powerade. In the book of Exodus tabernacle, her timbers have resonated with many holy prayers. She's well used, but will not be abused by a famished gazelle on the prowl. As her well-aged aromas spice the air, and the gazelle salivates at the sight of her savory leaves, she elevates her root chemistries to new low-down heights. She permits the gazelle to nibble her, but suddenly her leaf juices, polyphenolic biomolecules as astringent as sin, turn disgusting and foul. Heartburned, the gazelle turns up his nose to find a fresher sister tree downwind. But the fresh sister tree, suddenly on alert, has received a whispered warning whiff from the abused acacia. Her gassing tells the unnibbled sister to go sour on him. The confused gazelle, with a lingering taste of sweet acacia on his lips, must hunger on and on, upwind. During the first few autumns, my father's little New World garden was done in by the cold. Terra maligna, he called it. The sky was too gray, the tomatoes wilted by frost, the winter indoor life, with its aching moments given to staring through windows at a barren yard. Here in Midwestern America, where were the mountains and sea? And how could he save the fig tree from the blizzards of this new world? He begins seeing it. Should he build a special barn for his fig tree, higher than the garage? What comes over a man, said Robert Frost, is it soul or mind, that to no limits and bounds he can stay confined? Thus Henry Ford's factory worker, Ford's Igor, my father, wonders if he should challenge nature and conquer the winter elements. Did he make my mother a happy woman that night? Did you know that trees have sex lives? Let me tell you about oak love life. Here's what the ancient Roman poet Virgil said about the oak tree. And I quote, "Full in the midst of his own strength he stands, stretching his brawny arms and leafy hands." Now let's hear what the oak tree would say. "The Roman poet got me all wrong. I have brawny arms and leafy hands, but those fluffy catkins, pollen-gorged, have an ambience entirely feminine. Then check out the tiny leaf buds up high, the flowers from my other brain, my crown. I've got proof. I'm both staminate and pistolate. At the slightest hint of wind, I swing both ways. I'm homebody, too, king and queen, renowned for 1,000-year reigns in one small place. A little fire under me can get me going, clear out the stubs and shrubs, the underlings, provide the breathing space I need to give vent to the many ways I breed. My delicate pollen has manly eyes. It loves going everywhere except the shade. As male, I'll fertilize every flower in my way, and my blossom brides hug pollen from far away. After my acorns, like penis heads, begin to swell, they nosed forest nooks to set their roots. That keeps my tribe going on and on. We're made this way. Please ask us why. Then ask heaven and earth and the Holy Spirit of air why we're so promiscuous." The chill sets in long before September 1st. My father gazes at the fig tree, watches as the leaves begin to fall, and on a late October Sunday he's in the yard again. First, he bends the tree toward the ground. He ties it down with a rope. Around it he piles leaves and grass, and on top basketfuls of manure. This heap is walled in by tightly stacked bales of hay. As the temperatures fall, only the topmost bales of his fig barn are visible above the snow. What was he thinking about on sleepless nights? Bills to pay and too much work to do after work? A disturbing letter. His mother, still in the old country at 91, is very ill. Will he ever return to Italy to see her again? He now knew how way leads on to way, how the chain reactions of choice lock us into limited returns. As the snows melt away in early May, he pulls the bales aside and begins digging away at the mass of manure and rotting leaves. Little nubs bigger than raindrops appear and then fall off. Tony Posa comes over for a glass of wine, carrying a few of his own figs in a linen cloth. "How come I never have figs?" my father asks. "Because, like I told you," says Tony, "you got to bury a fig tree good." Bury a tree? In late fall, my father trims the tree back to its proper bounds, digs a trench along the base of the garage, bends the tree into the trench, ties it down, and buries it. When the snows come, it looks like a grave. For the first time, I see my father dead. And when my mind reels away, I see the grandfather in Italy I have never seen. It takes years more for me to see myself buried there too. Where does music go after it's played? Sounds, like roots, are invisible, but do they disappear entirely? My sister Aurora died a couple years ago, but maybe her piano, its actual wood, has something left over to say to us in some odd way. Song life. After my sister passed away, she who played the old upright and sang, her melodies hovered like an aura, sunsetting light in our living room. When she lay dying, I felt the slow fall of the rhythms of her breaths, the air I held in whenever the mailman appeared as shadow before our front door. Evenings, I keep recalling her melodies and conjure the colors of the dress she wore the night she spun into the arms of the man who loaned her his name, and how after she married him and retreated into the noise of years, her piano became her confidant and her only lover in the house. What did the lumber in that upright take in from her fingers and voice? What melodies did it memorize when she played and sang them again? One night, when they were alone in their beds, the two men, haulers, who pitched the piano from their truck into a dumpster ditch, were awakened by the gravity of its last chord. So what do roots know? Their eyes mud-smeared in the dark. How do they decide it's time again to burrow their way down, purl more deeply toward the succulence of moisture and minerals that ascend to unfurl in sky like prayers unleaving from autumn leaves? Eons ago, what tangle of root DNA spiraled forth to become the forest clans that cross mountains and seas to be hewn into shelters where we live and toil cross-eyed in midnight oil, inscribing our whims on Bible leaves while re-engineering the genius of genes into our manuals and machines? What grammars of what lost languages inform tendrils and taproots, wise enough to translate their alchemies into trunk, branches, flowers, and fruit? Listen dearly to the chords pianos exhale from wood deemed dead. Listen again dearly to the chords pianos exhale from wood deemed dead, and to roots taking tones in from dirt. Suddenly the fig tree's over my head, and the figs begin showing themselves inside the canopy of leaves. They turn purple in the August heat, then they sag and fall into my father's hands. Here, he says, a milky drop is oozing from its stem. Like this. With his thumbs, he splits it open for me to look inside. And what do my teenage eyes see as I gaze into the pink seed-filled flesh? Something I had not seen before. My father lips it closer to my lips. Here, taste it. Yuck, I say, as I force it down. But taste naturally matures when given proper respect, as do memories. For many years, I walk right past the ripening figs, the taste of figs as un-American as my parents when they jabber in Italian in front of my friends. I think New World highways are better than Old World paths. Rather desperately, I want to look and feel American. Much later, when I begin to see my future in my past, I develop a desire for figs. The next time you're in a grocery store and see pears, bananas, peaches, nuts, apples, don't look forward. Think back. Windfall. Scattered on a busy boulevard lawn, the fallen apples blush and shine as they wait to be chosen and held. No questions asked about ownership. Or about how seeds morph into fruit unfurled from soil's netherlands. Apples, rained on the grass from above, from blooms flowered like wedding gowns in the fragrance of evenings and dawns. Free, for bees delirious with desire, for buds swollen into unforbidden fruit, delicious, hanging on for dear life, until a breeze sends them forth quietly down onto the lawn next to the street nobody owns, the faces in passing cars fixed on tail lights, not bright enough to shine on one soul thankful enough to see the gift of apples, to stop, gather, and feast. We cannot tell a lie. It's the deals we've cut for ourselves that are chopping down the family tree. How many trees does it take to manufacture one car? How many American highways carved from rich soil did my father see leading away from mountains and sea? After those highways drove him to the automobile plant in Detroit, did he see how the streets of that city, configured as a grid imposed on the radiating spokes of a wheel, were luring him further from the taste of figs? How many times, contemplating the factory fires, did he pause to ask, what am I doing here? By then, it was too late to back out of the big Faustian deal America was making with the machine. So we light our fires, make smoke of our despair, we spew our troubles out and seldom say, the trees, dear trees, will give us back our air. While cars and wars exhaust more lives with care, the forest roots keep digging into clay. We light our fires, make smoke of our despair. While stem and branch do work we never hear, flowers and leaves return on time each May. And trees, the trees, they give us back new air. They give more than they receive. It is their way. We light our fires, make smoke of our despair, while trees, their lovely leaves, give us new air. We would have to fell a forest to produce the paper necessary to properly celebrate this plant. Trees, enduring in what seems lifeless cold, provide all manner of nuts, berries, and fruit, their wood shelter and heat. Their leaves are the solar panels giving us the air we breathe. A tree's natural art, standing between sky and earth, crosses our high yearning for transcendence with the limitations of our humanity. My father's little fig tree grows in significance as I begin to see it at the center of ancient religion, legends, and myths. Though trees are said to provide home remedies for many human ills, though many unlettered peoples deem trees animate and sensitive, the Ojibways, for example, reluctant to cut them down out of concern for inflicting pain, trees in Chinese lore bleeding and crying out when hacked or burned. Though the great northern forests are the original Gothic temples, embodiments of the life spirit, though the Swedes, Slavs, and Lithuanians were tree worshippers before their conversion to the faith, symbolized by the Calvary and Christmas trees, and though several myths have at their center a drama featuring woman, serpent, man, and tree, their setting a garden radiant in the sun, the tree of knowledge and of good and evil, synonymous in some of these myths with the tree of immortal life. Yet the tree looms largest when the great poets, among them Blake, Shelley, Yeats, figure the tree as the human mind, great-rooted blossomer of intellect, imagination, and song. All this in my father's little fig tree, which I hereby name my family tree. Tree is the instrument wind plays to orchestrate the rhythms of blackbirds and days with the rhymes of wildflowers and nights. She who knows the serpent's embrace, the ways of the underworld, the wily commands of wrong and right, is named the world tree, the tree of all seeds, the soma tree, the tree of enlightenment, the tree of knowledge, the cross, the tree of life. I've asked you to think about what roots maybe know. Now here, I think, is what leaves know. Leaves know the power of place, their role in the dazzling outcome of roots. The art of living within view of the two fragrances of life, sun and shade. The politics of free passage for air allied to no state. The turn the other cheek tactic for storms gone wild. How to brew the air we breathe. How to orchestrate the incomparable music composed by anonymous wind. Leaves, how to sway and dance, how to put their colors on, blaze away, be outward and visible signs of a big, beautiful thing wonderfully in the way. On foggy, still nights, they know the atonement of sleep, the moment to let go.